Nur saw on the rock a black figure with sharp eyes, burning red. Even though it was broad daylight, Nur could clearly see her skin, which was covered by fur. In addition, he also has buffalo horns. It wasn't long before their eyes met each other before Nur told Ayu that they had to go home soon. "Why the heck, Nur, why are you in such a hurry to go?" "I'm sorry, Marsalam, it's been a long way to bring us here," said Ayu. "Yes, it's okay," Nur replied. After touring the village, they immediately got on the motorcycle to go home. Then, before leaving the village, Nur saw the ghostly figure of Yu again. After arriving at the main road, they immediately climbed into the car and talked in it. "Nur, invite Bhima, yes, with Widya, and acquaintances with my seniors too," said Ayu in the car. "Why should I invite Bhima?" replied Nur. "Just let it be crowded, you've known Bhima for a long time," said Ayu. "Why don't you just ask?" replied Nur. "You've been to the same school, so you've known each other for a long time. Anyway, invite Bhima, yes," Ayu said. "Okay, yes," replied Nur. Nur also relented. "Now I'm calling Widya so he can immediately make a community service program or KKN proposal before the campus releases the KKN list. It's dangerous if the campus has released it. Anyway, we already have the place for KKN," said Nur. Slowly, their car left the forest road. Nur and Ayu returned to their city and prepared everything before they later returned to the village with their other friends. At noon, Nur saw Widya and Ayu at the debriefing day before their KKN departure to the village. After waiting long enough, finally two people who joined their KKN group appeared. Their names were Wahyu and Anton. They again discussed all the work programs in the village and determined the schedule of departure. All members agreed, including Widya, who continued to say almost all day that his mother had a bad feeling about their KKN location. Nur just kept silent and listened, because inside she also felt the same way. When the time came for the night of departure, Nur, Widya, Ayu, Bhima, Wahyu, and Anton had gathered, and the journey was continued with the elf car that they had rented earlier to take them to the forest, where they stopped, where they would later be picked up by the villagers on bicycles and motorcycles. Meanwhile, Nur could still see his theme, Widya, who had an uncomfortable face. Nur could only pray that they could depart safely and, hopefully, return home safely too. However, no one knows whose prayer God will answer. On the way, the drizzling rain started to fall. Nur just looked at the deserted streets. There were no other vehicles. Right at the red light stop, someone knocked on Elf's car glass. Nur was so shocked that she jerked back from the car seat. Nur saw an old beggar who kept banging on the windshield, making everyone in the car confused, including the driver, who then shouted for the old man to stop while throwing coins. From the old man's lips, Nur saw him speak, "Don't go, son." Her voice sounded familiar, like an old woman's voice. But they ignore it. Half an hour later, they arrived at a stop at the edge of the forest. After waiting, you could see a series of lights from motorbikes approaching from across the path, and Nur said so. It was the people from his village who picked us up. Wasting no time, they continued on their way. On the footpath, with the streets muddy because of the drizzle, past the big trees and the dark filled with fog, coloring their way. At that time, only the sound of motorcycle engines could be heard, without any sounds of night animals or anything else. However, everything changed when suddenly the sound of Javanese gamelan music was heard from far away. His voice sounded faint from afar. However, over time, it became clearer. Nur also observed the location around it, and then the scent of jasmine flowers stung his nose. Nur is still looking for where the sound came from. Nur then saw a woman looking down with her neck wagging right between the grass and the path. Followed by swinging movements of her hands and arms, which moved in rhythm with the sound of the gamelan music, Nur realized that the woman was dancing. He danced in the middle of the night, amidst the darkness of a silent forest. You can see the movements are so graceful, even though the motorcycle continues to move towards the destination village. Nur could see clearly, she danced very enchantingly, as if she were performing on a stage that Nur could not see. Who dances on a dark night like this? Nur was silent in the horror she felt alone. Not long after the motorcycle stopped and arrived at the village, Nur did not say anything. He then saw Mr. Prabhu welcoming them. When Mr. Prabhu invited them to rest while in this village, Vidya suddenly asked Mr. Prabhu, "Sir, how come the village is so far away?" "It's not far, ma'am, sis. It's only 30 minutes from the main road," replied Mr. Prabhu. Nur only listened to the conversation. She didn't want to say anything. She saw Ayu's face, which was red, either because of embarrassment or something. Maybe Ayu felt that Vidya had said something impolite as a guest who had just arrived. Vidya really shouldn't have said that when he just arrived. In the midst of the debate between Vidya and Ayu, suddenly, from behind a distant tree, a black figure with red eyes seemed to be stalking them. Unfortunately, only Nur can see that. Finally, the debate was over. Nur left the figure, which was seen peeking from behind a tree. Then he entered a house belonging to one of the residents who wanted to accommodate them while carrying out their community service program, or KKN, duties. But it turns out that in the house, it seems that the debate between Vidya and Ayu continues. Ayu said to Vidya, "How come you are stubborn? You have been told, it didn't take half an hour, but you didn't understand," Ayu said. Nur still saw the debate going on, but instead of mediating, Nur was more concerned with other things, one of which was the gender Yu figure. Why was he stalking her? However, suddenly Vidya said something that made Nur unable to ignore it. "Did you hear or not that there was the sound of gamelan music in the middle of the forest earlier?" asked Vidya. However, Ayu responded to Vidya's question in a mocking tone. "Well, at least it happened that someone was holding a celebration in the next village, especially if it wasn't that," said Ayu. Nur, who heard that, immediately denied Ayu's words. "There are no other villages here. This is the only village in this forest. People used to say that if you hear the sound of gamelan music, it means a bad omen," said Nur. That night ended, although the debate still continues in their respective minds. But Nur then wanted to tell them what omens were waiting for them in the village. "I want to say, for a moment, is it possible?" Nur asked Ayu, "What are you saying, Nur?" she asked. Then Nur and Ayu went to the kitchen with Nur's face still tense. He still remembers, his eyes could not be wrong to have seen the figure of a strange creature. "I want to ask you, don't you feel strange in this village? Do you remember how Mr. Prabhu came, strictly forbade us, and we do KKN here? Don't you get suspicious?" Nur asked Ayu. "What do you mean by talking like that?" Ayu said it curtly. "If you say this because of Vidya's case earlier, it doesn't make sense. Nur, you yourself are following me to observe here, right? Is there anything strange?" "No, never mind, it's only been a few weeks anyway," said Ayu. Then Ayu left, leaving Nur. While it is impossible to tell what Nur saw, Ayu does not even believe in mystical things. Here, Nur also gave in again. Suddenly, someone called Nur. Vidya called. Nur looked at Vidya's sad face. It seemed he had just cried. It's not strange indeed. Who wouldn't cry when they feel something that doesn't even make sense like that? "Can I ask for help?" asked Vidya. "Please don't talk any more about the previous one to people about me hearing the sound of the gamelan. I feel bad if it is heard by the villagers. We are guests here." Nur just nodded. However, Before Widya was about to leave, Nur immediately said, "Wid, actually, I also heard the sound of the gamelan. I even saw someone dancing in the forest," said Nur. Spontaneously, Widya was immediately shocked. The story is still long. Wait for the continuation of the story in a few days. We will bring it back just for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your help.